Hello and welcome to the Medfield Memorial Public Library's Centennial Celebration. In 1917, Granville Daly, a prominent businessman and philanthropist in Medfield, gifted the library to the town in memory of his wife Phoebe and daughter Carrie. To commemorate this wonderful historic event, we have interviewed a select few members of our community who will bring a unique perspective to the history of the library and its importance to the town. So the first person that we spoke to was Connie Jones, who was a much-loved children's librarian in Medfield during the 1970s and 80s.
It's so hard to believe that this is 100 years old. You know, 1917 didn't seem that far back when I first started working here.
The next person that we interviewed was Charlotte Reineman. Charlotte is a lifelong resident of Medfield, and her mother, Edith Howlett, began as the head librarian in the 1940s.
That was my wonderful job, is to open the boxes. And it was like Christmas.
The next person that we spoke to was Ann Thompson. Ann is a former trustee of the Medfield Library, and she was also on the building committee for the major renovation and addition that was put onto the library in 1998.
I moved here at the end of 1963 and was expecting my 5th child very soon when we moved here.
Wow.
And one of the first places I went was the library, because I had 4 other children, of course, and 2 of them were in school, so the library was a big part of getting there. And that was the first elected board I was on, was the library board of trustees.
For an overall historical perspective, we then spoke to David Temple, who is the president of the Medfield Historical Society.
At that time, it was just this one room, and the town grew from perhaps 2,000 people, probably about 12,000 in 1980 when the library expanded.
And finally, we had the pleasure to speak to Barbara Layton. Barbara is a lifelong resident of Medfield, and she attributes her lifelong love of books to the Medfield Public Library.
Because it was about boats, I guess, and it was about salt water, and it was about sailing. it just got me, that's all. I just loved it.
Libraries are the few places where it's intergenerational, which is much healthier. And problems today are dreadful with drugs, and I think kids lose their way. And I think one of the reasons is we don't hold it to that steady tribal feeling that we get when we're together. And that, yes, it takes a village to raise a child, and that's true. And if we don't, each of us, look out for that kid who's down the street, we lose them.
This was a haven for a lot of kids. I thought, this is a safe place, and this is where you should be. You know, there are the appropriate role models around you. I think in this day and age, public libraries are more critical to the population than ever. They're such an enormous resource for people looking for work, for people who can't afford a computer at home so that they can stay connected. And there's something so comforting about opening a book and holding it, and it's a treasure trove of knowledge.
Daly was a Medfield industrialist. He was part owner of the hat factory before Mitchell bought him out in about 1890. I was reading that his wife and daughter had both died, and that's why there's that memorial plaque up there, why this is called officially the Memorial Library.
There was only one librarian as a person, but they said, well, what people call the big desk, no, but the main floor of the building. And of course that's where the door was that faced the street. So in the wintertime, that was an ungodly blast of cold air that would blast right into where the people with the librarian had to sit. So they would build a temporary structure around in front of the building, in front of the door, the main door. So you had to go through another door in order to get into the building.
And this was the main room, and the children's room downstairs, and the large circulation desk.
My parents moved to Medfield in about 1946, and I would come up here fairly often. I remember back in those days there was this huge circulation desk.
These were the stacks, and the Roman back was fiction, and was the fiction section. This was all nonfiction and reference along there. And there were 4 very large, long tables, longer than these, going in that direction.
The half circle was where, it's not the circulation desk now, but it was then. And there was a little washroom behind it, and then the boardroom behind that. And of course, we only had half the size library because we added the big, beautiful addition, which echoed that library.
Yes.
But it was a very elegant building, and you went up beautiful steps. That was the only entrance was up there. And we didn't use the basement. We didn't use the trustees' room, which was also beautiful, which was behind the main room in the library. And there were heavy, heavy tables on either side, and then books put in the middle. And I can't quite remember because it might have moved, but the children's books, I think, were in that corner, which is now into the office.
We had no air conditioning, but we had a very large floor fan that everybody stood in front of all the time. And the office was that desk right in there, just that space. That's where the secretary was, that's where the director was, the assistant director, and all of us who made phone calls. Oh. And in those days, you only had to dial 4 numbers.
When I was on the library board in the late 70s, we started the work for the new library edition, or whatever you want to call it, in 79, and finally finished it, I think, in 81. But our chairman was a man named Marty Gottlieb, who lived on Nebo Street. He was a lawyer. He was the reason I think we got it done so smoothly, and he made the presentation at town meeting for us, and it really made a big difference. So finally finished it in 81.
And there was a great need.
And the church was torn down, and then the rectory became part of the library.
When I was growing up here, where the gazebo is now on Main Street, was the site of St. Edward's Church. It was a Victorian Gothic type of building. The church was ultimately torn down. It was not in very good shape, but the rectory was a pretty straightforward brick house between the church and the library, and it's about on the site where the expansion is now. And that was made into the library annex and served the town for 20 years until the new library was built.
I was on the board when we did that.
When you did
Marty
that.
Gottlieb was the one I was telling you about that oversaw that whole new edition that we did. And Marty was, I've said before, absolutely terrific on that. And I think he was the reason it all went in and it went so smoothly because of Marty. He's a lawyer, which was a big advantage. But he was not afraid to put his foot out and to just take care of everything. And that he was the one that really spearheaded our new addition to the library. And of course later on they renovated even more, but the main impact was in the late 70s, early 80, 81, when we got it finished. Now we have the nice little sitting area with a roof out there. I remember that. We were all talking about how to do the railings and how to do the roof.
For the gazebo?
Yeah, because we wanted it a place that was welcoming, where people might sit and chat and talk and maybe bring their library books out and sit.
When I moved here in '62, there were 6,000 people in town. 3,000 of them lived at the state hospital. So it was a pretty low population, and there were not farmland, but open land, I would say. And I lived in a little apartment above Will's Hardware for a while, and so I had a picture of the whole town, so looking down on it now, it really looks different. And Medfield's become such a desirable location.
It really
for families, and it's no wonder it's grown and blossomed like it has.
It was wonderful. And those were the days when you had sets of books. You had the Wonder Book, you had all that set. You had mythology, you had everything you could think of. Fairy tales, the yellow fairy tale, the red fairy tales, anything like that came in those boxes that I could open. And we very carefully would access, put them in. And I could help with all that. So I must have been 8, 9, 10, 11, in those years. And I just adored it. And there was no other career I was ever going to take except be a librarian. That was the best.
I was actually working in the kindergarten in Medfield and started doing some programs here. Then eventually I was appointed the children's librarian.
Nice.
And I loved it. I just loved it. I loved every minute. It was such magical time for me, watching kids learn to read and engaging them, and then staying in town, seeing them later as they grew up, and even having their own children in my preschool. So it was, I loved it, just loved it. This was home to me. I remember a lot of my dreams, and I dream about this library a lot. Must be kind of wanting to go back, but this, I dream about the library a lot.
Yeah. Well, it was
Because it was a very special time in my life. And I still am in touch with families I met who are growing up here, and those friendships formed during helping their children find the right book. Stay to this day.
Sometimes we're both the library, but it was really good to have that, and they liked that. That was part of their life, was those little, it's only half a mile down from where our house was.
Right.
So it was a nice little walk. And my kids were all heavy readers, still are. Sure, we'd sit in the reading room or talk or find some good books to read. It was always an adventure to see what you could find that you hadn't read before. It's maybe one of your friends told you about, because that's what's fun. The best thing in the world is learning to read.
I don't think I was ever a snob about books either. I thought if your kids are reading Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, great, they're reading. Give them a comic book, get them reading, let them develop the skills so that then when they need to use it for something more classic, they'll be able to.
I do remember, and I don't know exactly when, and I haven't looked it up, that there was a complaint from one of the people in the town about her putting out Wendell Willkie's One World, which is a publication that he did, on the tables. And they didn't like his point of view and wanted it taken out. And my mother didn't do that. She left it there and said, no, we need diversity here. And she stood up for what she believed in all areas of her life, which I think really served her well in the library. She loved her library work. I think she really gave a lot to her job, because I've been thinking about this. In our household at home, reading was not, something you did then, and then you did the cooking, and then you did another job. It was just us. It was what we did. And she was wonderful as a reader. She loved books. Her love of reading is what came through everything. And it was just, it wasn't a segmented thing. It was integral to our family and then carried into her job up there.
Just the joy I had in my job. My husband said to me once, "You've always been able to do what you love." And I said, "Yep." And that's an amazing, amazing thing when you look back on your life. I always loved seeing kids laugh, seeing kids have light up when they learned how to read. I used to call it spark time, when it just suddenly comes together and they know that the letters make words, and the words make sentences, and that wonderful time. And it happened all the time.
So the book is a physical thing. It imparts information. It gives you enjoyment, entertainment. You can never take that away. I hope, because I personally love paper, I love the physicality of a book, I love the sensory experience. You order the books, and you know what's coming, and they come, and you open that box, and they're so shiny. No one has opened them, no one has cracked their spine. No, they're just, the graphics on the covers are beautiful. If it's children's books, forget it. That's just the best. Again, it's that whole tactile sensory experience that you get from opening a box of brand new books that no one has touched. The book, the printed page, it just goes back so far, and our historical documents are on paper. You can't get away from it. So my sense is books are here to stay. I think that the Medfield Memorial Public Library has a long and deep history of being there for its community regardless of what its needs are. Public libraries really, again, they address that need of face-to-face conversations, public discourse, important conversations that people with different ideas and opinions can come together and hopefully achieve a mutual understanding. We're in fractured times now and people aren't sure of what is what. Libraries, again, they step up and they become that important place where people feel secure. It's a safe place, and they feel that whatever information they're getting there is true and factual. We are becoming a society that could become very insular with all of our technology or devices that we have. Really, the beauty of a makerspace is that it's not just about technology. It's really about bringing people together and having that experience of learning from one another. And there's just really no greater feeling than knowing that you've learned something new and you know how to make something and now you can pass that on. To see a child really just sit down in the corner of a library with a book, you know, just totally isolated. It's wonderful to see two of them together sharing a book. That's wonderful too. To really delve into a book and read, it's a very personal experience. It's different than reading on a computer. Computers are like little sound bites of information, but a book is linear and the language is lovely. And you really have to comprehend the written word, and how everyone comprehends it is a little bit different. So I think that's the exciting thing for me, is when kids just really get a big kick out of books and the information. Yes, books are still important and certainly offer those and always will, but we added new formats. So then you have your books on CD, we started VHS and now DVDs, now we have ebooks and downloadable audiobooks for people to enjoy. So we have moved on with different formats, kind of doing the same thing, giving people access to quality fiction and great nonfiction. Again, leveling that playing field so that everyone can have access to books and information.